there guys, this is me, Malorian, and this is going to be the first in a series of videos that I want to do, more so trying to help gamers. Now, the question today is going to be coming from a local gamer, Adam Bennett, but I'm going to be grabbing these from, like I said, our local Facebook. I'm going to be grabbing them from the Mr. Malorian page, and if you have comments on these videos as well. So really try and do these, just try and help everybody else kind of know how the game works, because it's one of the biggest barriers to entry into Warmachine is the rules, and there's a lot of them, and so the better we know them, the more we can all enjoy the game. So what Adam wants to know about is token collection. This is a rule that, if you look at it, can be very simple in Warmachine, but can also get very, very complex. Now, let's just start from the fact that I called it token collection, because right off from the get-go, there's different tokens you can get. The most common ones would be like soul tokens and corpse tokens, but I want to leave this open-ended because who knows where Privateer Press might take this, what little new rules might come in. You know, there could be skeleton tokens, there could be scalp tokens, who knows, but in general they have the same process and same flow that you go about doing them, so I thought I'd cover that here, so that even though the details around these will be a little bit different for every case, if you know the main areas to look into, it'll make your issues a lot more simple. So let's start off with the fact that there's different tokens, like I just said. So the very first thing when you see a rule that's talking about collecting tokens is you want to be asking yourself, what type of token is it? Is it a corpse token? Is it a soul token? Is it something else? Now, the next question you want to be asking yourself is, what's going to be triggering it? It's going to be saying in it that's going to be coming from enemy models, or maybe from friendly models. Maybe it's just from any model. So that type of thing is critically important. So a good example of this would be like Alexia 1 versus Alexia 2. Alexia 1, if these models are dying around it, doesn't matter if it's enemy or friendly, you're getting that token. If it's Alexia 2, it has to be enemy. So again, that's the second big thing you have to make sure you understand from the way that you read it. Now, pretty much all these things are going to be talking about warrior models. So warrior models, they aren't going to be battle engines, they aren't going to be war jacks, they're not going to be structures. They're your regular rank and file models. Those are warrior models. So that one is pretty constant through them. You're not typically getting corpse tokens from jacks and stuff like that. But again, something important to read from that. The next one that might be coming up is living or undead. Now, something that says, like, let's say you only get it from friendly living warrior models. Well, that means it has to be something that's your own. It's your own friendly models. It means it has to be a warrior model, not a battle engine, but also has to be living. What that means is that there's a rule on some of them, has a little skull token there, or not token, skull icon that's on the card or on its rules there, and that means it's undead. And that's really where it comes in. There's a lot of different rules that talk about living versus not living. So if it's undead, it's just not living, and that's where things like this might actually interact. Now, I think the next big thing to think about is, what's the range you're going to be dealing with this collection? Is it going to be directly from a spell, that if I kill you, I'm going to be taking your soul? Or maybe it's within my command area, or maybe it's within my control area. And it's really important to understand the difference of those two. A lot of times I see people confusing control and command. So of course, just to kind of quickly just spell it out here, your command is that last value on your card, that's the CMD, and your control area for a caster is going to be your focus times 2. That's that area there. So knowing all those limitations is going to be critically important. And I wish I could just tell you, oh, it always works like this. It's always on friendly living warrior models, and it's always from your command. But unfortunately, these things are always different. Some of these things are triggered off of spells, sometimes they're triggered off of latent abilities, sometimes it's off of feats, and each one's worded a little bit differently. So it's very important that you understand what those differences are, so that in your case, you can look at it and know, like, oh, this is based on this one. Okay, this is the way that actually works. So just to kind of really touch on these summaries now before we go to the exceptions, the biggest things you're looking for is, what's the type of token? What's the range you're going to be dealing with? Is it friendly or enemy? Does it have to be living? And usually it's going to be a warrior model, but it might not be. So just also look for that one as well. So in general then, that's what will happen. If something dies within that area, you're going to get that token. It goes on your model. Now, probably the next thing to think about is the limitations of how many of those you can have. Because for the different models that out there that have these rules, sometimes you can have a max of 3, sometimes you can have a max of 5, sometimes there's no maximum whatsoever. So make sure that before you have all of a sudden, like, 20 tokens on Alexia 2 and she can only have a certain number, make sure that you know what that limitation is, so you're not going to be, I don't want to say cheating, but making a mistake because you don't know what that limitation is. That's always like a rule balance type thing to make sure you're not going crazy and getting all these tokens. Now, that's probably the best way of how it works, but now let's talk about some limitations. And some limitations might be on the model themselves. Some models, for example, are soulless. There's not usually something that's like corpseless, so that one doesn't really have that interaction, but there's soulless. And if you have a soulless model, you can't get souls from it. So for something that's collecting soul tokens, if you have a model that dies that's soulless, you're not going to get that model, that token. So, okay, as long as both players know those rules, that should be pretty straightforward. The next thing to do then is, well, what happens if you're both collecting the exact same thing? Well, if you're both collecting the exact same token, let's say a soul token, and it's both off the same way, so of course, like if one was collecting souls from friendly and the other one's collecting souls from friendly, well, those are never going to interact because one model can only be friendly to one side. But let's say one's collecting enemy and the other one's collecting friendly, and now a model dies, who takes it? Well, the first rule you look at is who's closest. Whoever's closest to that model is the one that's able to take it. Okay, that's interesting. Although sometimes it gets even more complicated. Sometimes there might be a rule saying, regardless of how close the models are, you're the one that gets that token. Okay, so in that case, that overrides. Sometimes we'll have other interactions where it says, any models killed within this area, I pick where they go to despite how close they are. Or models within this area, enemy models cannot collect soul tokens or corpse tokens. So the layers of this are already, as it stands right now, a little bit complicated, and of course as the game grows, could only get more complicated. So what my suggestion would be is that when you go into a game, understand what rule that you're actually going after, what token you're actually trying to collect, and it'd probably be easiest just to ask your opponent right off the bat if you're not sure. So for a good example is if I'm even in List Chicken, this is a good time to bring this up, because if I'm playing Gaston 2 and I'm wanting to be collecting souls with my soul-sucking gun, a good thing that I'll be asking my opponent is, do you have anything that's soulless or stops the collections of souls? It's just kind of like if you're going into a List Chicken and you have a gun list and you're like, okay, do you have anything that shuts down shooting, like stealth or anything like that? It's just a good interaction to get worked out before the game, before you're like in the middle of it. And now all of a sudden you have a very lopsided matchup, or you've made mistakes, or whatever have you. So in this case, in your List Chicken, I would just ask them, like I just said, do you have anything that's soulless or stops souls? And of course, if your corpses, I don't really know of anything that's really stopping corpses right now. Usually that stuff, all the complication is around souls, but maybe that's something you could always bring up. Or do you have something that's also going to be collecting souls or also going to be collecting corpses? And what that lets you do is, it's not really giving up your advantage. It's not like coming into it, they didn't know like, oh, you collect souls and stuff like that, and it's going to be a gotcha that you can use against your opponent. But it's really good going into a game knowing that, hey, we both have this rule. We're both going to have to be a little bit more aware going into it that whenever these situations come up, you have to remember, like, okay, remember I collect souls, and you have to remember that these ones here are soulless, and I have to remember this too. So let's just work together and make this game roll a little bit more clearly. So that's what I'm saying. Like token collection at its base level seems very, very simple. It's like, oh, something died, I collect this token from it. There you go, it goes on my model. But there's just lots of layers that you have to really keep in mind. And as long as you keep those things in mind, then it's all easy. So let's go and read this question now, and then we'll apply it to this logic. So if someone takes a corpse, can I still pull a soul with my High Reclaimer? High Reclaimer collects souls. We could ask a question here about, whether it's, the whole living, blah, 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 stuff like this. But coming down to this, from one model, can you get a corpse token and a soul token? Absolutely. There's sharing is caring. You can have these crazy situations where from one model you're collecting the soul and the corpse, and then from one model you're now recurring 2 different models that came back from it. And I mean, this can get more as we go in the future. Again, we're like maybe from one model, maybe one person's taking the soul, one person's taking the corpse, and another person's taking the scalp. Who knows again what type of rules it might be coming up with, but it's not like it's only one token comes from a model. So there you have it. There's token collection, and we'll catch you again later. Bye.